Hi everybody, welcome to Do You Believe on Paranormal Zone TV. Thanks everyone for joining me tonight. And I have a great show tonight. Oh, and first of all, anybody who's watching the show for the first time, if you would please subscribe to this channel, I'd appreciate it. Don't forget to give the show a like. And everybody, tonight we have two authors. Let me show you the book. Two authors. Beverly Falstad and Rich Little, and they have written a book, Cold Case to Case Closed, My Story. And this is about Lizzie Borden. They believe they've solved the case of who was the axe murderer at the Lizzie Borden house. So everyone, let's welcome Beverly and Rich to the show. Hey, Beverly and Rich, thanks for joining me tonight.
Well, thank you for having us, Noreen.
Hi, Noreen. Really a pleasure to be here.
Oh, and thank you so much. Now, you know what? There may be some viewers that are watching the show that don't really know the story of the Lizzie Borden axe murders. So would you just, either one of you, or take a turn, give a little background of this story?
Sure, I'll start and Bev can give her side of it. This happened about 123 years ago in the town of Fall River, actually the city of Fall River. And Fall River was a major textile city here in Massachusetts, down near the Rhode Island border. And on August 4th, 1892, there was a double homicide in the house. And Andrew and Abby Borden, husband and wife, were brutally murdered, bludgeoned to death. And in the daytime, at between 9 and 11 in the morning. And different suspects. Fall River was a big city at the time, even maybe a little bigger than it is now. It's about 90,000 people now. It was about 92,000 back in 1892. And they suspected anybody who was different, anybody who had an accent, anybody who was an immigrant, anybody who had a previous rage problem or anger problem or alcohol problem. But they soon narrowed it down to three suspects, three people of interest. And they included Lizzie Borden, she lived in the house, and the domestic servant, a woman by the name of Bridget Sullivan, and an uncle who stayed overnight, who did not live at that address, but stayed overnight the night before. His name was John Moss. And those were the three main subjects that they were interested in within 30 minutes after the bodies were discovered. It was Lizzie who discovered her father's body when she came in from out back in the backyard. Beth, can you add anything?
Actually, Noreen, when writing this story, I wrote it as part of our Injustice of It All book that will be coming out with shortly. And I titled it is Innocent with an I, because the whole thing was, with Lizzie Borden, you hear the skipping rhymes. Lizzie Borden took an axe and gave her mother 41 bucks, and when she
Beverly,
had done,
Beverly,
she gave her father 41.
Beverly, you're breaking up. Beverly,
you're like to cling to that, but it was a media circus.
Beverly, you're breaking up.
Like, if you want to compare it to the OJ case of then.
You're breaking up. Your audio is breaking up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is that better, Noreen?
Okay, now go ahead. Try it again.
You want me to fill in some spot of one of three daughters, Andrew Borden and his wife Sarah. and the middle daughter, Alice, died when she was 2 years old, and that was before Lizzie was born. And so there were two girls, two sisters, Emma and Lizzie, and they were about 9 years apart. Lizzie's mother passed away when she was 2 years old of natural causes. And it was just the father, Andrew, and the two daughters. And several years later, this is right after the Civil War, he remarried Abby Borden. And they originally lived on Ferry Street. They moved to 92 2nd Street, and they were there for about over 20 years. And Lizzie was a teacher. She taught in her church. She taught English to Chinese immigrant children. She taught English to immigrant women who worked in the mills. Fall River was a mill town, very heavy textile. It was called the Spindle City. And she was heavily involved in her church. She was a member of the hospital board. She had toured Europe for about 5 months, about 2 years before this tragedy. She was involved with her church. She was involved in a women's group called the Flower and Fruit Society, which gave fruit and flowers to people in hospitals and who were invalids and things like that. She was a woman ahead of her time. She was not the recluse that everybody paints her. She was an upstanding citizen and a pillar of the community until August 4th, and that's when everything changed. She was 32 years old, about 5'3", maybe 135 pounds, and everything was going good until August 4th, and after that, her life changed completely.
She was also an animal lover, I understand, as well.
Yes, in her will,
Absolutely.
a lot to the Fall River Animal Rescue League and things like that. And interestingly enough, her and her sister Emma became estranged back in 1905. And Emma went on her way and moved in different places and finally wound up in Newmarket, New Hampshire. Lizzie always lived in Fall River. She loved the community, and she wouldn't leave, and the community made her pay. She was shunned by her church, taunted by people, especially with that little poem. And that's one of the reasons why her name is Lizbeth. On her death certificate, she had her name changed soon after the event from Lizzie, that was her given name, to Lizbeth. Her gravestone is marked Lizbeth at Oak Grove Cemetery.
Mm-hmm. Now, what about the father? What kind of a personality did he have?
Well, he was successful in business. Some people called him cheap, but he was very successful. His estate when he passed away was in excess of $500,000, which in today's dollars would probably be between $9 and $13 million. He was involved with several banks. He was president of 2 banks, was involved in the board of directors of several others. He was board of directors of several mills in Fall River, textile mills. He owned rental properties throughout the community. In fact, there was a new building being built in Fall River at the time of his death, and it's still there. It's on the historical register. It's called the Borden Building, and that is still in downtown Fall River. He was extremely successful. The word is that he was frugal and that he was cheap. I'm not sure that that's entirely accurate. They tried to paint, when I say they, authors have tried to paint that this was in a rundown neighborhood of Fall River and that Lizzie and Emma wanted to get out of there and move to where the higher end of town of the Highlands. And but that neighborhood was not a bad neighborhood. They had doctors that lived on 3 sides of them. and the home on the north side was called the Buffington Mansion, and that's where the former mayor of Fall River lived. So they certainly didn't live in a rundown neighborhood. And it's not that far from downtown, and that was one of the reasons why Andrew Borden liked it, because it was near his business. Mm-hmm. But the time of his death, they were planning to move to a new home up in what they call Fall River Highlands.
Now, as far as education, she didn't finish school, did she?
Well, there's a question about that. We know she had a high school ring, a ring that normally a senior in high school would get, and she gave it to her father, and her father wore it on his pinky finger till the day he died. But we can't find her records. There is no record of her graduating from Durfee High School, which is the high school in Fall River. Her sister Emma, on the other hand, went to a private school called Wheaton, and Wheaton used to be a women's college, and now it is a co-ed college, and that's probably about 25 miles from Fall River. So Emma did her formal high school education at a private school called Wheaton.
But now, Lizzie was also a kleptomaniac.
According to the reports. She was never charged with kleptomania, being a kleptomaniac. There was an incident after the death of her mother and father with a firm down in Providence, Rhode Island, by the name of Tilden and Thurber. And it was stated at that time that she took something out of the store, 2 porcelain tiles. That was settled by her attorney. Whether or not she stole them or there was a misunderstanding, but there isn't really any formal evidence to prove that she was a kleptomaniac. And even if she was, that doesn't mean that she was. It would have been possible for her to kill her mother and some stepmother and father.
Yeah, so from what I read was that the father knew her problem and that he worked it out with the store that she would frequent and steal from, and he would just say, put it on my tab, and he would pay for that.
That's entirely possible, but...
Now, what about, okay, now also read that he had a son by a woman that he had an affair with. What do you know about that?
Absolutely false.
Okay.
There was a Willie Borden.
Hey, Rich, talk back. Go. You're buffering. Talk. Sit back a little bit.
Okay. There was a Willie Borden, and that story about him being Andrew's illegitimate son came out about 20 years after the fact. There was a Willie Borden. He had some issues. He had some psychological issues, but there's no connection at all between he and Andrew. His last name was Borden, but there were a lot of Bordens in Fall River. In fact, there still are.
Okay. All right. Now, also, in your research, what about this unsavory sex in the home? What do you know about that?
Again, when Bev and I went on our research, what we researched to come to our conclusions was the witness statements and the testimony at the inquest, the preliminary hearing, the grand jury hearing, and the trial, and the newspapers of the time. That incest story, again, is a story that came out perhaps 25 to 30 years after the event. That didn't come out during the event. You probably can hear a train going by me right now.
Yeah. The viewers are having a hard time hearing you,
Yeah.
Rich. They say
Are you able to hear me, Noreen?
yeah, I can hear you, Rich. They say the audio is really bad. That Rich, you're muffled.
I'm sorry, let's see, how's that? Any better now?
No.
How about if I push way back? Maybe I'm driving the microphone.
You know, in the research when I was researching everything on Lizbeth's life, I never did really see anything that pointed at the fact that there was any incest going on in the house. There was the very strange connection of her father wearing her high school ring on his pinky. People associated that with maybe being a wedding ring. What I did read, though, was that she was referred to as plain, as homely, and when she did try to have some relationships with boys, her father didn't approve of them. He didn't think they were good enough. So in my stomach, I feel like there wasn't anything inappropriate going on between Lizzie and her father. I think that it was a very strained relationship that she had growing up with her stepmother. It's obvious from everybody, who does their research on it, that there was no love lost between the two of them. And as for that, I really feel Hollywood plays into it a lot, and people try to find that twist, but that really isn't something that I felt at all when doing the research.
Mm-hmm. Were you able to get into the court records and the court hearing and get any other information that maybe the public today doesn't know?
Rich, the copies that you were able to purchase of the transcripts, are you able to speak of that? There was a...
Yeah, the most interesting part is the witness statements that the police officers took down. And those are available, and we went through all of them, and there was always a poison connection. That people believe that Lizzie tried to purchase poison the day before the event, and that was going to be the prosecution's main thrust as far as her guilt is concerned. But they wouldn't allow that particular information, and the research shows that initially, the pharmacist clerk who claims that she tried to buy poison, he said he didn't know who she was, but he might be able to identify her. And that was in the witness statement. And within a week, they had an inquest. And at the inquest, he said, yes, it was Lizzie Borden who came to this store. He'd seen her before on the street, and that it was her. And then about 3 weeks later, they had a preliminary hearing, and he said, oh, you'd known Lizzie Borden for years. She used to come in a store where he worked before. Now, I don't think he did this intentionally, but the prosecution groomed him to be a witness that would certainly put Lizzie in a bad light. And what started off was he said he never saw her before, and it wound up that he had known her for 6 or 7 years.
Interesting. Well, okay, so, and then tell us about Abby. I don't know anything about Abby, so tell us about Abby. Do you know how he met her? How old she was? Because she seemed to be a lot younger than Andrew.
Well, she was 8 years younger than Andrew.
Oh, okay.
He met her through church. To the Congregational church that they both attended, and he married her when Lizzie was 5, and Emma was about 14. And soon after, they moved up to 92 2nd Street, which is the scene of the crime. And So she was a little bit younger, about 8 years younger. She had never been married before. That was her first marriage.
Oh, okay. So why did Lizzie hate Abby so much?
I don't know that she did hate Abby. I think they coexisted. And she never treated Abby as her mother. One of the reasons was Emma kind of brought Lizzie up after their birth mother passed away. It was Emma who took care of Lizzie for those next 3 years before Andrew remarried. And Emma and Lizzie never really accepted Abby as their mother. And when asked by the police that first day, do you know if your mother had any enemies? Lizzie said, she's not my mother. She's my stepmother. Mm-hmm. And that one statement alone was a red flag to the police department that there was a problem between the two of them. And they kind of took that ball and ran with it.
Okay.
I did see quite often, though, in my research where there were statements from Lizzie saying that Abby had called her an old maid because she was still unmarried and still at home. But again, it's really hard when doing the research to pick out what another author has just felt and what is real fact. And in our book, Rich and I really tried to put all of the facts that we could find together so that when people read it, they could make up their own mind, about who really did it. And coming into the story, neither of us really, we did not know what we know now, and it was really exciting, when Rich came to the conclusion he did, and I'm really excited for more people to share in that.
Mm-hmm. All right, so okay, so now let's go into the murder. Lizzie is accused of killing both Abby and Andrew. Emma wasn't living in the home at the time?
She was on vacation.
She was?
She was away on vacation.
Okay, sit back, Rich. Okay, so then, all right, so then talk about the accusations toward Lizzie then. Why did they suspect her? Because why?
Well, number one, they didn't like the way she grieved. She was not wailing and crying. She answered their questions right up front. The police, several police officers investigated and interrogated her within a half an hour after the police arrived. They arrived at about 20 past 11 in the morning. It was Lizzie who sent for help. It was Lizzie who had somebody contact the police. It was Lizzie who had Bridget show the police department where the axes and hatchets were in the cellar. Mm-hmm. It was Lizzie who hired a Pinkerton detective to see if she could solve the case. And it was Lizzie who offered a $5,000 reward to see if anybody could solve the case. It was she who had Bridget and the neighbor, Mrs. Churchill, try to get help, try to find a doctor, and it was Mrs. Churchill who talked to somebody and notified the police. Interestingly enough, the day of the murder, at 9 o'clock that morning, half of the Fall River Police Department left on their annual excursion to an amusement area in Rhode Island called Rocky Point. and they left by steamer. You could go from Fall River all the way to New York City by steamer. So half the police department was unavailable on that particular day. They were very, very short-handed. But to give you an idea of the size of the police department, they had 125 officers on the Fall River Police Department in 1892, and 2 women police officers, 2 matrons.
Oh, okay. So then, so Lizzie discovered the bodies, and that must have been horrific. I mean, if she didn't commit the murders, that must have been horrific. I mean, just to see the scene itself, because the description of the murder in our day, our time, the way they were butchered up would be considered a hate crime. So who would hate the both of them that much to do that to them?
Well, Lizzie only discovered her father's body. Bridget Sullivan, the maid, and one other person, Mrs. Churchill, went up the stairs, and they saw the body of Mrs. Borden from under the bed. They didn't get a very good look at it, but they could tell that there was a body on the other side of the bed in the guest bedroom. So Lizzie only discovered her father. The other 2 people discovered the mother on the 2nd floor. And it was horrific. And it was that they were butchered. And the first thing one has to consider is, could Lizzie physically do what she did to 2 people to kill them? Was she strong enough? Was she big enough? Did she know how to do that? Or was it somebody else?
Was there, in the court records, was there a struggle?
There were no defensive wounds on either of the victims. Abby was slain first, somewhere after 9 o'clock, between 9 and 9:15 in the morning. They believe that the first wound that she received was sent her on above the bridge of the nose, so she was face to face with her killer. The remaining blows, she fell, and as she fell, she turned. She was in between the bed and the bureau, and the remaining blows were to the back of the head and to the upper neck area, and it wasn't 41. There were 18 distinct wounds on her body. And
what about Andrew?
All of Andrew's wounds were from the rear. Some on the top of his head, and others down towards the front across the eye area. But it's believed that all of his wounds came from the rear. And he received, depending on the records that you read, 10 or 11 distinct blows.
And what about Abby? How many blows did she get?
18.
18, yeah. So that little rhyme that the kids sing, I forget why somebody made that rhyme. I guess they had to do numbers and whatever, so it would all rhyme for that little song. And do you know why they made that little song? I can't remember why they made that.
Well, it was a jump rope song.
Oh, that's right. Yes, that's right.
And they had to use the word axe because that's the only one that rhymes with wax. And the true weapon that the authorities thought was used was a hatchet, and that's hard to put into a rhyme.
Oh, right. Now, from what I read, there was no blood on that hatchet that was found in the basement. Is that true?
There were several hatchets found in the basement, one with a broken handle, and and several others, and a couple of axes as well. And there was blood on one of them and hair, and they assumed that that was the murder weapon. They sent that into Boston, into Harvard University, along with the stomachs of both victims, because some of the police department, the district attorney's office, thought that these people might have been deceased when they were butchered, and maybe they had been poisoned first. So they did an autopsy that afternoon with 9 different doctors. Every doctor in Fall River wanted to get in on the autopsies, and they were done on the dining room table. And they removed the stomachs from both victims.
Sit back, Rich.
And sent them into Boston.
Okay, sit back. Poor Rich. I'm sorry. You get into it and then you get closer. Okay, so. Then, okay, now in your book, I didn't read the book, so you're going to have to tell us. In your book, you are claiming who was the killer.
Well, what I did was, I'm a math teacher by profession, and I set a graph with times, clock times running down one side, and the 2 victims, victim number 1, that would be Abby because she was killed first, victim number 2, Andrew, and the 3 suspects, Lizzie and Bridget, the domestic servant, and Andrew, John Morse, the uncle. And I put, there was a separate column for one main witness, who was Dr. Bowen, who was a neighbor of the Bordens, and the Fall River Police Department. And I charted those down between 6 o'clock a.m. on the 4th of August and 12:30 p.m. on the 4th of August. And to find out where everybody was and whose alibi, if any, didn't match up. And I was flabbergasted when I found out that one of those suspects, his alibi just doesn't add up. It's impossible to be in 2 places at the same time.
So, what did it boil down to? Which person?
Well, John Moss was the uncle of Emma and Lizzie. He and Andrew had been in business for years. He lived out in Iowa, and he was in the cattle and horse business. And he shipped horses and cattle from Iowa to Fall River. Andrew had several farms in nearby Swansea, Mass., and they would have these horses and cattle shipped by train from Iowa all the way to Fall River, and then they used to sell them. And business, while it was good, profits were declining, and Andrew was unhappy about it. And this is a point of record. They had an argument the night before in the presence of Abby about declining revenue. They had one particular horse that just arrived, and it had a colt with it. Somebody bought the colt, and 2 days later it had a lame foot, and Andrew had to give the money back, and he wasn't happy, and he was threatening to get out of the livestock business. John Moss stayed there overnight. He stayed in the guest bedroom, and that's where Mrs. Borden was slain the next morning. He left just before 9 o'clock, and he said he went downtown, and then he went to visit relatives about 1.25 miles away. Andrew left next. He went downtown, there's probably 11 to 12 witnesses. 11 of them had testified in the trial that they saw him all over town, what bank he was in. He went to the barber shop to get a shave. He talked to somebody that was working on his property. No one saw Uncle John except his relative up on Wybosset Street. And the police department checked out Uncle John's alibi. He said he was at Wybosset Street. They went up there and they said to his cousin, whose name was Lydia Emery, was John Moss here today? And she said yes. And what time did he arrive? Well, they weren't exactly sure, somewhere around 9:30, maybe it was 9:45. And what time did he leave? Well, there was a niece there who was not feeling well, and she and the cousin decided that it was around 20 past 11. And that's what they told the police. And the police said, well, if it was 20 past 11, he couldn't have been at 92 2nd Street. And so the police department left. And the next knock on the door was from a reporter from the Fall River Herald. And he said, was that a police officer that was here? And they said, yes. Well, what did he want? What did he ask you? What did you tell him? And so they said, well, he asked about Uncle John and if he was here and what time did he leave. And he said, well, what time did he leave? And he said, well, he left at about 11:20. And if Mrs. Emery had stopped talking right then, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now. But then she added something. And what she added was, my relative Uncle John Moss left at the same time that Dr. Bowen arrived. My niece was sick and Dr. Bowen arrived right about the same time that Uncle John left. And the reporter said, did they see each other? And she said, no, I don't think they did, but it was right around the same time. Well, Dr. Bowen was at 92 2nd Street at 11:20 in the morning. He had gotten home at about 11:15. His wife said, Bridget Sullivan was just here, something's happened over at the Borden house, and he ran right over. He examined Andrew Borden's body and said that he was deceased. And with that, there was a knock at the door, and the first police officer, George Allen, arrived. And George Allen said he arrived at 11:21. And who answered the door? Dr. Bowen. Well, Dr. Bowen cannot be at 92 2nd Street and 4 Wybosset Street, which is 1.5 miles, 1.25 miles away. He can't be at the same place at the same time. So somebody's alibi is not making sense. It's either the police department is wrong on their time, or Dr. Bowen's wrong on their time, or Uncle John Moss is not telling the truth. I don't think those people, his cousin, lied about him leaving at 11:20. I think they thought it was 11:20. In reality, I think it was about 10:20.
So bottom line is, who do you think did the murders?
It had to be Uncle John. He had the opportunity. He also had the experience.
Yeah, that is...
Butcher.
Did you want to say? Go ahead, Beverly. Go ahead.
People question quite often. They question, well, Lizzie must have had to shower in between, and there had to be blood everywhere. So when you look at the potential people who could have murdered the Bordens, he was a butcher by trade. It was his job to go out to a field, take a cow, and bludgeon it over the head, and it would die. I mean, that's how butchers did it. You didn't just go to your local grocery store and pick up some hamburger. So the man could very well do a relatively bloodless murder, as morbid as it sounds, out of anyone. He was definitely practiced. So it's very, very plausible to me that it was him.
Now, was this John Morse, was he there? Did he show up for any of the trial? Was he in the audience?
Yes, he was there for the initial inquest. He was, initially he was a suspect, but soon he became a witness for the prosecution. And when he became a witness for the prosecution, they didn't ask him any more hard questions. He was a witness for the prosecution at the inquest. At the preliminary hearing 2 weeks later, we can assume that he probably was a witness at the grand jury, but in Massachusetts, the grand jury results are still sealed. And but we kind of think he probably was there for that. And he also testified at the trial in June of 1893. But after the trial, he left Fall River within a day and a half. Now, he'd been back from Iowa for 2 years, but the day after the trial, he left Fall River and he never returned to Fall River. He stayed out in Iowa in that area for the rest of his life.
Now, when there was an autopsy that was done, and we know there was 18 to 19 blows, in any of that inquest or at that court, did they say at what point was he dead? Because all the other blows, we know he was already dead by the time he got to 19. So did they say how many blows it took to actually kill him before he continued on?
According to the autopsy report, they think that probably by the fourth blow, by the fourth strike, Andrew Borden was deceased.
Okay.
Abby Borden, it's difficult to tell. She was hit square in the face the first time, and then the subsequent blows to the back of her head. I would say probably the third blow probably was the one that killed her. It seems to be in the autopsy report that one was the most severe. But of course, when they looked at the skulls, and this is rather morbid, when they had the funeral cortege left the scene, and the bodies were not interred in the ground. The bodies were taken to a storage area, and then a second, more complete autopsy was done by the state medical examiner and 2 other doctors, and that was about towards the 3rd week of August. And at that time, the skulls were removed. And what they did at that time was they boiled the skulls, removed the contents, boiled the skulls, and then made plaster casts of the skulls, which they brought into court as part of the prosecution's evidence. And the injuries they sustained were only in the head area, nowhere else on their body. No, only in the head area.
And so why do you think they just went for the head?
I think whoever killed them knew
Because he was butchering them.
They were butchered. And
They were butchered.
And he carried the tools of the trade with him. He carried a rolled up apron, which a butcher wore at that time, and he also carried a special cleaver, a heavy cleaver that he used, because he was often asked by people, "Can you butcher this particular animal for me?" When he came back to Fall River, he worked as a butcher at the Davis Meat Market. He normally lived with the Davis family in nearby Dartmouth, but on the night that prior to the murders, he stayed at the Borden house and was there in the morning.
Then, but Rich, how come if he was also a suspect, did they check his tools out, his apron for any blood?
No,
Oh, really?
no.
The whole investigation, Noreen, was just such a joke. When you look back, really, reporters were on the scene before police were on the scene in a lot of it. It's like even the barn, they went back 3 days later to investigate in the barn, you know, after anybody and their dog had been through it. So it's the whole case was sensationalized, and I really think that once they had Lizzie and she hadn't reacted the way the public wanted her to react when she saw her father dead, they just assumed she was guilty and everybody else got a free ride. And I think that's why Uncle John left Fall River and never returned.
Now also, didn't Lizzie burn? Okay, now that's in the theaters. Did she actually burn her dress?
She burned a dress that she said had some paint on it.
Oh.
And you know, there was investigations to see, you know, could there have been blood on it? Could it even have been, you know, well, I'll let you, Rich, go ahead with the dress. There's so much on it.
The police department did their initial search of the home on the day of the murders, on the 4th of August. They checked closets and they checked every room. On the 3rd floor, there was Bridget's room and several storage rooms. They checked that. They checked all the rooms on the 2nd floor, and they checked the rooms on the 1st floor. They checked the barn and the loft in the barn. They came back on Friday with more people, and they checked all of the dresses that were in the dress closet of both Emma and Lizzie, and they checked every dress against the light to see if they could find any blood on any dresses. During the funeral on Saturday, now interestingly, this is a crime scene. They did the autopsy, as I said, on the dining room table, and they also had the wake on Friday night in the dining room. They didn't move them to a funeral home or anything like that. They had the wake right there. And the funeral on Saturday morning was also from the home. And as the funeral was going down the street, the police arrived again, the district attorney, the state patrol, which later became the state police, the Fall River Police Department, the chief, the assistant chief, well, they were called the marshal and the deputy marshal, and several other police officers, detectives came during the funeral and checked the house all over again, and the dresses were all checked at that time. The dress that was burned the following Sunday, and it wasn't done secretly. Alice Russell, who was the person who testified that she saw Lizzie burn the dress, she was there. Emma was there, and Lizzie was there. And Lizzie brought this dress down from upstairs, and she said, I'm going to get rid of this. It's covered with paint. And Emma said, well, I guess you should. And it was a cheap, what they called a Bedford cord, and she tossed it in the stove, the kitchen stove, which was a wood-burning stove because that's what they used to cook on, and she burned it. And Alice Russell saw her do that, and at the time, Alice said, you probably shouldn't have done that. We shouldn't have burned a dress. Well, that's when it went to grand jury in November. The testimony of Alice Russell is the one that they issued an indictment on. At first, the grand jury said there wasn't enough evidence to indict Lizzie for murder, even though she'd been incarcerated since August. But later on in the grand jury proceedings, they brought Alice Russell in, and she told that dress story, and they issued an indictment for her to go to trial at that time.
Wow.
In retrospect, it was a dumb thing to do, to burn the dress.
Yeah. Yeah. Beverly, do you have anything to say?
No.
Oh, okay.
I'm just enjoying listening to this all. Really, I really feel that people have held on to the skipping rhyme and the fact that, this little girl, she took an axe and she whacked the crap out of her parents, and it was a horrible, bloody scene, and people want to, as horrible as it is, they want to hold on to that little piece of history and go to the bed and breakfast and sleep with Lizzie's ghost. I do believe in ghosts. I don't want to sound, but I'm on Paranormal Zone, so that's okay. But I honestly feel that it's not Lizbeth that's in that house. It's Abby, and she got that blow straight to the face from Uncle John, and until Uncle John, even though they're both gone now, until the real killer is named, I don't think the poor woman can rest.
Really? That's possibly true.
I feel that to my toenails, Noreen. I really, really do. Because I even saw there's been photographs of the bed and breakfast where there's this face in the window, and it seems to have a kerchief on, and they're like, is that maybe the maid? Is that Lizzie? I really think it's Abby.
Oh my gosh, I've never been there. Wow.
I hope you go, Noreen. I know that you have all kinds of connections, and you have a lot within you, and I hope you guys go there and talk to Abby and get the down low on Uncle John.
Now, is there anything else that might be in their closet that hasn't come out about the family?
Not as far as I know. I think that with the movies that came out, there was a lot of controversy around the relationship that Lizbeth had with Nance O'Neill, and I think that over the years, a lot has been played into that really wasn't there. I don't know. I'm just glad that all these years later, maybe a cold case is going to be solved.
Oh, really? Now, did she have boyfriends, or was she a lesbian?
She did try to have boyfriends, but her father did not approve of them.
Oh, okay. What happened to her after she was acquitted? What happened to her?
Well, she did leave court thinking that she had the support of the people who, were on her side while she was in jail all those months. But as soon as she left the courthouse, she was shunned, and her name was dirt. And people there was the Borden alphabet that came out that was published in the papers, and a lot of horrible little tidbits about the family. We've included a lot of them in our book. And it's just it's like the sensational case. It ended with her being found not guilty, and people just weren't ready to accept that. They wanted to find out why she did it and how she did it, and that's where there's generations of people that have just assumed that, and I too, on starting this, I assumed that she had killed her parents. I had no idea. It was Rich and his daughter that had always had such a deep interest in the case, and they had gone to Fall River, and they even did a balloon ride over it, and it was just so personal to them. And so that's why I took on this story when we started out, because I had no idea except for the skipping rhyme. Everything that I researched was fresh for me. So I don't come at the case with a lot of, I didn't live in the area and know all of the local history in that. But I really enjoyed it.
I believe most of us did think that she killed Abby and Andrew. I mean, there was nothing else.
Absolutely.
And so
Absolutely.
then after all of this, she inherited, her and her sister inherited everything.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
They inherited everything. They made a settlement with the family of Abby because they thought they should, and the rest of it was equally divided between Emma and Lizzie. And they never sold much property. They kept 92 2nd Street and used it as a rental property. And Lizzie bought other rental properties in the area where they moved. They went back to 92 2nd Street, the scene of the crime, after her acquittal. Within 60 days, they had moved up to the Highlands area, up to a place that Lizzie called Maplecroft. Yeah. In fact, that house is being redone as we speak, and that's going to be a bed and breakfast. It's a beautiful Victorian home, which is probably almost 2 miles away from the Lizzie Borden Bed and Breakfast Museum. And they're underway on that as far as refurnishing it and refurbishing it. And they were there within 60 days, but they didn't sell the property down to 92. They kept that as a rental property. A little while later, in that fall of 1893, Lizzie and several others went to Chicago, to the Chicago World's Fair. So she tried to keep her normalcy of her life, but it didn't work out. If you watch the Lizzie Borden Chronicles, which has been on recently, which I found entertaining but not necessarily the truth, they painted Lizzie as being a serial killer. And in fact, I spoke recently down in Rhode Island, and somebody asked me a question. I didn't know that she was a serial killer, and well, she wasn't a serial killer, but the Lizzie Borden Chronicles had her on a rampage. And that's just pure entertainment.
Now, how old was she during this trial? How old was she when her...
She was 32.
32. And then how old was she when she passed on? She, I have a picture of her. Looked like she was living in a gorgeous home.
Well, the Maplecroft home was gorgeous. I haven't been inside of it, but I've been around it, and it's going to be gorgeous when they get it.
She died of pneumonia at 66.
Oh, really? Pneumonia at 66?
Yeah, pneumonia at 66 took her.
67 years old. And the interesting part is that Emma, who was 9 years older, she lived up in Newmarket, New Hampshire. She died within 9 days of Lizzie, so they both passed away within 9 days of each other.
Oh, wow. Oh, gosh.
But they never spoke after Emma left Maplecroft. They never spoke. So whatever their argument was, they took it to the grave.
Wow. That was a fascinating story.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell everybody, I have a picture of your book and where they can get it?
Well, locally, it's available around the Boston area at different bookshops. They do sell it at the Lizzie Borden Bed and Breakfast Museum, and they also sell it at the Fall River Historical Society. But it's available on Amazon, and you can get it there. All you have to do, if you look up Lizzie Borden and you scroll down a little bit, Lizzie Borden in books, you'll see full case to case closed.
Awesome.
Now, we are having issues, Noreen, with finding the book on Amazon Canada. And so currently, we do have somebody working on that, because you go onto Amazon.com and it shows up right away. In Amazon Canada, we just don't seem to exist. So I do have copies available in Edmonton, but yeah, any interest in Canada, I can definitely get a book to anybody who wants to read one.
Wow, that's awesome. Rich and Beverly, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you, Noreen.
God, when I found, I search all the time for my guests, and I found your book, and I thought, oh my God, I have to have you. Thank you for coming on the show.
Well, thank you. Sorry.
Thank you, guys. Hey, best wishes and good luck with your book. I hope you sell lots of books.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Sure, enjoy your show, Noreen.
Oh,
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good night. Thanks.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you. I'll still be. Oh, hold on. Oh, gosh.
Lived on Ferry Street. They moved to 92 2nd Street, and they were there for about over 20 years. And Lizzie was a teacher. She taught in her church. She taught English to Chinese immigrant children. She taught English to immigrant women who worked in the mills. Fall River was a mill town, very heavy textile. It was called the Spindle City. And she was heavily involved in her church. She was a member of the hospital board. She had toured Europe for about 5 months, about 2 years before this tragedy. She was involved with her church. She was involved in a women's group called the Flower and Fruit Society, which gave fruit and flowers to people in hospitals and who were invalids and things like that. She was a woman ahead of her time. She was not the recluse that everybody paints her. She was an upstanding citizen and a pillar of the community until August 4th, and that's when everything changed. She was 32 years old, about 5'3", maybe 135 pounds, and everything was going good until August 4th, and after that, her life changed completely.
She was also an animal lover, I understand, as well.
Yes, in her will,
Absolutely.
a lot to the Fall River Animal Rescue League and things like that. And interestingly enough, her and her sister Emma became estranged back in 1905. And Emma went on her way and moved in different places.
Hey everybody, welcome to Do You Believe on Paranormal Zone TV. Thanks everyone for joining me tonight, and I have a great show tonight. Oh, and first of all, anybody who's watching the show for the first time, if you would please subscribe to this channel, I'd appreciate it. Don't forget to give the show a like. And everybody, tonight we have two authors. Let me show you the book. Two authors. Beverly Falstad and Rich Little, and they have written a book, Cold Case to Case Closed, My Story. And this is about Lizzie Borden. They believe they've solved the case of who was the axe murderer at the Lizzie Borden house. So everyone, let's welcome Beverly and Rich to the show. Hey, Beverly and Rich, thanks for joining me tonight.
That's, well, thank you for having us, Noreen.
And
Hi, Noreen. Really a pleasure to be here.
oh, and thank you so much. Now, you know what? There may be some viewers that are watching the show that don't really know the story of the Lizzie Borden axe murders. So would you just, either one of you, or take a turn of give a little background of this story?
Sure, I'll start and Bev can give her side of it. This happened about 123 years ago in the town of Fall River, actually the city of Fall River. And Fall River was a major textile city here in Massachusetts, down near the Rhode Island border. And on August 4th, 1892, there was a double homicide in the house. And Andrew and Abby Borden, husband and wife, were brutally murdered, bludgeoned to death. And in the daytime, at between 9 and 11 in the morning, and suspects. Fall River was a big city at the time, even maybe a little bigger than it is now. It's about 90,000 people now. It was about 92,000 back in 1892. And they suspected anybody who was different, anybody who had an accent, anybody who was an immigrant, anybody who had a previous rage problem or anger problem or alcohol problem. But they soon narrowed it down to three suspects, three people of interest. And they included Lizzie Borden, she lived in the house, and the domestic servant, a woman by the name of Bridget Sullivan, and an uncle who stayed overnight, who did not live at that address, but stayed overnight the night before. His name was John Moss. And those were the three main subjects that they were interested in within 30 minutes after the bodies were discovered. It was Lizzie who discovered her father's body when she came in from out back in the backyard. Beth, can you add anything?
You know, actually, Noreen, when writing this story, I wrote it as part of our Injustice of It All book that will be coming out with shortly. And I titled it is Innocent with an I, because the whole thing was, with Lizzie Borden, you hear the skipping rhymes. Lizzie Borden took an axe and gave her mother 41 bucks, and when she
Hey, Beverly,
she had done,
Beverly,
she gave her father 41.
Beverly, you're breaking up. Beverly, you're...
like to cling to that, but it was a media circus.
Beverly, you're breaking up.
Like, if you want to compare it to the OJ case of that.
You're breaking up. Your audio is breaking up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is that better, Noreen?
Okay, now go ahead. Try it again.
You want me to fill in some spot of one of three daughters, Andrew Borden and his wife Sarah. And the middle daughter, Alice, died when she was 2 years old, and that was before Lizzie was born. And so there were two girls, two sisters, Emma and Lizzie, and they were about 9 years apart. Lizzie's mother passed away when she was 2 years old of natural causes. And it was just the father, Andrew, and the two daughters. And several years later, this is right after the Civil War, he remarried Abby Borden. And they originally finally wound up in Newmarket, New Hampshire. Lizzie always lived in Fall River. She loved the community. and she wouldn't leave, and the community made her pay. She was shunned by her church, taunted by people, especially with that little poem. And that's one of the reasons why her name is Lizbeth. On her death certificate, she had her name changed soon after the event from Lizzie, that was her given name, to Lizbeth. Her gravestone is marked Lizbeth at Oak Grove Cemetery.
Now, what about the father? What kind of a personality did he have?
Well, he was successful in business. Some people called him cheap, but he was very successful. His estate when he passed away was in excess of $500,000, which in today's dollars would probably be between $9 and $13 million. He was involved with several banks. He was president of 2 banks, was involved in the board of directors of several others. He was board of directors of several mills in Fall River, textile mills. He owned property, rental properties throughout the community. In fact, there was a new building being built in Fall River at the time of his death, and it's still there. It's on the historical register. It's called the Borden Building, and that is still in downtown Fall River. He was extremely successful. The word is that he was frugal and that he was cheap. I'm not sure that that's entirely accurate. They tried to paint, when I say they, authors have tried to paint that this was in a rundown neighborhood of Fall River and that Lizzie and Emma wanted to get out of there and move to where the higher